I thought I was moving to paradise when I settled in Willowbrook, the perfect neighborhood with a sparkling pool and friendly neighbors. But on my very first morning at 6 a.m., I opened my garage door and found a parking violation ticket slapped right on my car. My garage wasn't even locked yet, and they were already catching me. I had no idea what was going on until a soft knock at the door revealed Victoria, the young, charming HOA member, with a smile that promised she was about to shove a rulebook down my throat. Have you ever thought a simple ticket could turn your peaceful life upside down? Over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to tell you why Willowbrook isn't paradise but a trap of power, where people like Victoria use rules as weapons. And at just 30 years old, I found myself in a battle with no way out. Don't go anywhere, things are about to get a lot more shocking than you think. I arrived in Willowbrook full of hope. A new start after years of hectic city life and after losing my mom. The neighborhood looked perfect. Rows of pristine houses, the community pool gleaming under the morning sun like a jewel. I paid a premium for my corner lot with the pool view, dreaming of peaceful mornings with my coffee watching swimmers glide by. Victoria, the HOA board member everyone talked about, seemed friendly at first. Blonde hair, always in designer athleisure, carrying that clipboard everywhere like she ran a Fortune 500 company instead of a homeowners association. She smiled too perfectly and welcomed me with a "let me know if you need anything." But behind that smile was a quiet war brewing. The kind you don't see until you're caught in it. And soon I found out this wasn't going to be just about lawn heights or parking spots. This was about control. And Victoria was ready to tighten her grip. Life in Willowbrook started to unravel fast. One morning, I noticed a security camera pointed directly at my bedroom window. Nobody told me it was installed Victoria's watchful eye, as some neighbors called it. It felt less like safety and more like surveillance. Then came the first official warning my lawn was half an inch too tall. Victoria knocked on my door with that familiar smug smile, clipboard in hand, insisting I comply immediately. It was petty, but it set the tone, rules enforced not for community benefit but for control. Neighbors whispered about her obsessive rule enforcement. Basketball hoops banned holiday lights, fined guests questioned. Victoria wasn't just enforcing HOA rules, she was weaponizing them. My nephew, who'd come to stay for the summer, was banned from the pool. The message was clear: cross Victoria and you face consequences. The war had begun, but I wasn't about to back down. This wasn't just about grass or pools, it was about standing up to a tyrant hiding behind a rulebook. Victoria's grip tightened like a noose. Every morning, I'd find new violation notices slipped under my door, each one more ridiculous than the last. One day, she confronted me in the neighborhood cafe, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Ethan, your trash bins were out too early," she said, eyes gleaming like a cat who just caught a mouse. Behind her polite facade was a calculated menace. She'd organized a neighborhood watch, 3 volunteers armed with clipboards and cameras stalking residents for the smallest infractions. Every basketball hoop, hidden every garden gnome counted. I watched as neighbors who once smiled now avoided eye contact, afraid to be the next target. Miguel, my nephew, joked that Victoria was stalking us. But I saw the worry in his eyes, the weight of living under constant surveillance. This wasn't community care, it was control. And Victoria was playing for keeps. The breaking point came one sweltering June afternoon. Miguel and his 2 friends quietly enjoyed the pool during designated family hours. Laughter, echoed splashes filled the air, a perfect summer day. Then Victoria appeared, clipboard in hand, like a hawk circling prey. She demanded guest passes for the boys, passes I'd never heard of before. When I explained they were family and friends, her smile sharpened. "Rules are rules, Mr. Rivera," she snapped. "Excessive guests require prior approval. Pool privileges suspended for your lot until further notice." Neighbors watched in stunned silence, phones suddenly more interesting than the drama unfolding poolside. Miguel's friends gathered their towels, confused and embarrassed. Victoria posted an official notice on the community board making sure everyone knew who had broken the rules. It wasn't about rules anymore. It was about power, and Victoria wanted me and my family out. That night, Victoria didn't stop there. At the weekly HOA meeting, she made a spectacle of my rule-breaking, painting me as the problem. The room was thick with tension and fear. People who once greeted me warmly now looked away, afraid to cross her. Sitting there, surrounded by nervous neighbors and the stale smell of old coffee, I realized this wasn't just about pool rules. It was a show of power. Victoria wanted to send a message newcomers like me didn't belong, but she'd made a critical mistake picking a fight with someone who knew how to read between the lines. I spent that night poring over HOA documents, bylaws, and contracts. That's when I found a clause protecting family gatherings. A clause that Victoria's rules directly violated. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to fight back. 3 days after the pool incident, a certified letter arrived. Victoria scheduled a compliance hearing with only 48 hours' notice on a Thursday evening, the same night I'd planned to visit my mom's grave. The letter listed trivial violations: trash cans visible from the street lawn too high, and failure to maintain community harmony. I measured the lawn myself. It was within regulation. That night, I did what any lawyer would: dove into every HOA document I'd signed, every bylaw, every community charter page. 20 years of legal training kicked in. Buried deep in the charter was a clause stating reasonable accommodation must be made for family gatherings and multi-generational households. Victoria's guest policy, illegal. Even the letter itself was flawed: insufficient notice, vague accusations, and an impossible hearing date during a family emergency. She'd made mistakes, big ones, and I was going to use them. Thursday evening, the hearing wasn't at some community center. No, Victoria decided to hold it in her own dining room. I walked in carrying a manila folder packed with highlighted documents, the smell of her overpowering lavender air freshener filling the room. The HOA board members looked uncomfortable. Jim Walsh, the president, shifted nervously. Maria Santos, the treasurer, scribbled notes with intensity. Victoria's husband wasn't there, probably smart enough to keep distance. Victoria opened with a PowerPoint presentation, her voice dripping with condescension, outlining community standards and property values. When she finished, I calmly stood, documents in hand. Before we proceed, I said, let's address several procedural violations. HOA business can't be held in a private residence without notice. 48 hours notice violates our bylaws requiring 7 days, and your cited violations don't match any bylaw language. The room fell silent. Victoria's confident facade flickered. This fight was far from over. I pulled out the community charter pages, highlighted and tabbed for emphasis. Reasonable accommodation shall be provided for family gatherings and multi-generational household activities, I read aloud. My nephew's pool day with 2 friends clearly fell under this protection. Victoria's face flushed, her composure slipping. That language is outdated, she retorted. I shook my head. The charter can only be changed by a community-wide vote. Has there been such a vote? Silence. Maria Santos looked up from her notes and shook her head. Victoria's next move was predictable. She pivoted to personal attack, suggesting I was struggling to adjust after my recent loss, hinting my stress clouded my judgment. The room grew quiet. Even some of Victoria's supporters looked uncomfortable. I gathered my documents carefully. Thank you for your time. I will review the charter further and will be in touch. The vote upheld the pool ban, but something fundamental had shifted. That night, I opened my laptop and dove deep into public records, HOA formation documents, municipal filings, Victoria's real estate transactions. By 2 a.m., I'd uncovered the first thread: Victoria was the exclusive sales agent during the community's construction phase. Exclusive arrangements like hers usually came with incentives, big ones. Within a week, Victoria escalated her campaign, organizing a neighborhood watch patrol, 3 residents with clipboards and cameras documenting every minor HOA rule deviation. Suddenly, neighbors received violation notices for things ignored for years. Basketball hoops stored just inside garages, garden gnomes, even Christmas lights left up in July. My property became a daily target drive-bys, photos from multiple angles, printed warnings under windshield wipers of anyone visiting me. Miguel joked Victoria was stalking us, but I saw the toll it took on him. This wasn't community protection anymore, it was harassment. And it was working. Fear was spreading like a virus. One morning after a walk, Maria Santos, our no-nonsense treasurer, approached me quietly. "Dave," she said, glancing around like we were planning a secret mission, "there's something wrong with the HOA finances. Things don't add up." While Victoria played neighborhood sheriff, I put my construction law skills to work following the money trail. I installed discrete security cameras around my property, perfectly legal, and began logging Victoria's patrol schedules, every drive-by, every warning time-stamped and documented. HOA enforcement requires written warnings before penalties. Victoria's verbal harassment and immediate bans violated state law. I quietly connected with Jim Walsh and Maria Santos. I wasn't the first to face Victoria's brand of control. Stories emerged, families who moved away frustrated and beaten down. Maria hinted at financial irregularities but needed time to gather proof. The pieces were falling into place. Victoria's reign wasn't just about rules. It was about hiding something bigger. The turning point came on a quiet Friday afternoon. Miguel and his friends waited until family hours to use the pool. Everything was by the book. But Victoria showed up with her clipboard and 2 neighborhood watch volunteers like an HOA SWAT team. "Exit the pool immediately," she announced coldly. "Lot 12 remains under suspension." The boys complied without protest, but the neighborhood was watching. Victoria followed them to my driveway, voices rising. By then, half the community was watching from their windows. She ranted about community values and people who don't belong. Neighbors like Mrs. Chen shook their heads in disgust. The Johnson family, a young black couple, exchanged knowing looks. Victoria's words weren't just rules, they were a warning. I pulled out my phone and started recording. This wasn't about the pool anymore, it was about who got to belong. I calmly addressed Victoria while recording, "Can you cite the specific bylaw justifying this pool suspension?" She ranted louder, accusing me of not fitting community values. 3 neighbors emerged, visibly disturbed by her tone. Mrs. Chen shook her head. The Johnsons exchanged glances. I emailed the recording to the HOA board with a formal harassment complaint, detailed with timestamps and witness accounts. The board called an emergency meeting the next Tuesday. Victoria's defense was predictable, protecting property values from outsiders. The vote to censure her ended in a tie with Victoria abstaining. But cracks were appearing in her support. Maria Santos slipped me a manila envelope after the meeting, a pile of financial documents. "There's a smoking gun here," she whispered. That night I spread the papers on my dining table, heart pounding. What I found would blow the whole scheme wide open. The documents told a chilling story. HOA funds budgeted over $2.1 million for community amenities, but only $1.4 million was actually spent. $700,000 vanished. Victoria had been involved in every transaction. Emails revealed confidential revised pricing discussions with the developer, proof of inflated costs. Bank statements showed suspicious deposits into Victoria's personal accounts matching HOA payments. She'd received commissions far above the norm. This wasn't just abuse of power, it was organized theft. Victoria's aggressive rule enforcement was a smokescreen designed to silence anyone who questioned the money trail. I knew I needed allies and evidence to expose her. Maria had the financial documents and insider knowledge. Jim Walsh provided credibility and moral authority. Together, we formed a team ready to fight corruption. This was bigger than pool rules, it was a battle for the community's future. Victoria wasn't about to go down quietly. She launched a nuclear strike, filing a formal complaint with city code enforcement against me, alleging unpermitted modifications and commercial activity on my property. The inspection was scheduled for the same day as Miguel's graduation party, a gathering of 20 family members. Victoria timed it perfectly, aiming to humiliate us in front of the neighborhood. As Miguel cut his cake, a city inspector arrived, clipboard in hand. I met him with a banker's box filled with every permit inspection certificate and architectural plan. Miguel live-streamed the entire inspection, turning it viral. The inspector meticulously checked everything: electrical outlets, plumbing, even the attic. No violations. 0. Victoria hovered nearby, growing desperate, demanding the inspector look harder. Her behavior on camera was erratic, her frustration obvious. The neighborhood watched stunned as her scheme unraveled in real time. The inspector's final report was clear: my property was in perfect compliance. Victoria's desperate attempts to find violations backfired, spectacularly captured live for the entire neighborhood to see. Mrs. Chen brought lemonade for my family. The Johnsons offered to help clean up after the party. Even some of Victoria's usual supporters looked uneasy. Miguel's live stream exploded with comments, people calling her out, urging me to sue, sharing their own HOA horror stories. But there was more. As I reviewed the architectural plans used for the inspection, I noticed major discrepancies. The community amenities, the pool, the center, the landscaping didn't match the original specs. The budget showed $2.1 million spent. Actual invoices revealed only $1.4 million. $700,000 had vanished. Victoria's financial web was unraveling. I wasn't just fighting for my family, I was fighting for the whole community. That night, Maria handed me more documents, this time emails between Victoria and the original developer. The subject line read, "Revised Community Amenity Pricing Confidential." The email chain revealed a secret profit-sharing arrangement with inflated budgets designed to skim money off the top. Victoria wasn't just a ruthless HOA enforcer, she was part of a well-oiled scam. Further digging showed monthly contracts for landscaping, pool maintenance, and snow removal inflated by 30 to 40%. Victoria received kickbacks from every vendor. Her strict enforcement was a smokescreen to prevent residents from digging deeper. I explained to Maria. She's using power to silence scrutiny and line her pockets. Maria sighed. That's why no one wanted to challenge her. But now, armed with evidence and allies, we had a chance to bring transparency and justice to Willowbrook. This was more than a fight for rules, it was a fight for the soul of our community. We knew Victoria controlled much of the board. Jim Walsh was honest but outnumbered. Others were either afraid or benefiting from her schemes. I realized we needed more than evidence, we needed a plan. Our first step: assemble a team. Maria had the financial documents. Jim brought legitimacy and moral authority. I contributed 2 decades of legal expertise and experience unraveling fraud. We held our first strategy session in my living room, documents spread like a war map, the scent of Maria's homemade tamales mixing with tense determination. We identified 3 revenue streams: inflated construction costs, overpriced service contracts, and secret kickbacks. Maria warned, every inflated invoice is a thread to pull. I added, board members have fiduciary duties, they can be held liable if they ignore this. Our goal was clear: expose Victoria's corruption, restore transparency, and protect the community. This was a long game, one we were ready to win. Step 2 was evidence preservation. I taught Maria how to use professional case management software. Every suspicious transaction, every inflated invoice, every suspicious deposit meticulously logged and time-stamped. Meanwhile, Miguel became our social media intelligence officer, tracking Victoria's online posts. Her daily rants about problematic residents created a perfect timeline matching our harassment evidence. Victoria was practically documenting her own downfall. Next, I hired Sarah Chen, a criminal defense attorney specializing in white-collar crime, not to defend me, but to help prepare our case for prosecutors. Sarah reviewed our evidence and said, "You've got mail fraud, conspiracy to defraud, and obstruction of justice all lined up. We filed formal public records requests for all HOA financial documents fully legal and within our rights. Victoria would either have to comply or face criminal charges for obstruction." Our trap was set. Victoria had no idea what was coming. Jim Walsh used his position as HOA president to schedule a special board meeting focused on financial transparency. The official agenda was innocuous, but the message was clear: we were bringing Victoria's corruption into the spotlight. I spent evenings preparing presentation materials, simple charts showing where residents' money went, comparisons between budgeted and actual costs, and clear explanations of legal rights. Our goal wasn't to confuse with jargon, but to empower residents to demand accountability. Maria handled the forensic accounting, creating an airtight paper trail that prosecutors would envy. I drafted template letters for residents to demand audits and transparency, explaining their legal options. Every step we took was within the law. Victoria could retaliate, but she'd be fighting a community exercising its rights. Word spread quickly. Neighbors who'd once feared Victoria began asking questions. The tide was turning. Our community was waking up. Victoria's panic became obvious as soon as our public records requests hit her desk. Within 48 hours, she called an emergency board meeting to propose disruptive resident removal procedures, clearly targeting me. Her accusations were absurd. I was a mentally unstable widower harassing honest volunteers, she claimed. Social media exploded with fake posts, portraying me as a troublemaker. Whisper campaigns spread rumors about my mental state, suggesting my grief made me paranoid. Victoria's masterstroke was subtle dog whistles implying certain residents didn't fit community values, but her tactics backfired. The board meeting was standing room only. Neighbors came to see the showdown. I calmly outlined how her proposals violated due process and constitutional rights, citing state law. I presented documented evidence of her harassment campaign, drive-by photos, intimidation tactics, weaponized code enforcement. The room went silent as Victoria's power unraveled before everyone's eyes. Under pressure, Victoria lost her composure. She snapped, accusing me of using lawyer intimidation tactics to silence the board. I kept recording as she dug her own grave. After the meeting, she cornered me in the parking lot with a fake conciliatory tone. "Maybe we can work something out," she said, offering to cover my pool and landscaping fees if I dropped the complaints. Attempted bribery caught on tape in front of witnesses. I declined, calmly explaining financial transparency was for the whole community's benefit. Her mask slipped completely. She threatened me, claiming she had friends in city government who could make life difficult. The next morning, Victoria filed a false police report accusing me of threatening her during our parking lot conversation. She timed it perfectly 6 a.m. when the neighborhood would be watching. But I was ready with audio evidence proving her lies. Victoria had made a fatal mistake. When the police officers arrived at my door, I greeted them calmly. "I believe you're here because of a complaint from Victoria," I said. Before they could proceed, I played the recorded conversation from the parking lot, clear proof she was lying. The officer's expressions shifted from skepticism to disbelief, then barely contained anger. Filing false police reports is a criminal offense, they warned Victoria. Officer Rodriguez told her, "We strongly advise you to reconsider future complaints unless you have real evidence." Victoria was beyond reason, desperate and unraveling. Facing exposure of her fraud and harassment, she went full scorched earth. She filed a formal complaint with the city attorney accusing me of threatening community safety and using legal intimidation. She tried freezing HOA accounts to block my access to records. When that failed, she pushed for emergency votes of no confidence against Jim Walsh and Maria Santos. Her goal was clear: install a compliant board before the investigation reached her. The community split in two. Newer residents, intimidated by legal costs and believing in authority, rallied behind Victoria's narrative of protecting stability. Original homeowners' families who had faced her harassment and those demanding transparency stood with us. Most just wanted the conflict to end, no matter who was right. Then, local media caught wind of the story. Channel 8 News picked up Miguel's viral live stream and began investigating HOA power abuse across suburban communities. Our small Willowbrook drama became a symbol of unchecked authority in residential governance. Victoria scrambled to control the damage, granting interviews and spinning her story. Meanwhile, I filed a comprehensive criminal complaint with the district attorney's office. 20 years of legal experience taught me how prosecutors think. I presented evidence timelines, financial records, recorded admissions, patterns of obstruction. The DA's white-collar crime unit assigned Detective Sarah Chen to lead the investigation. This was no longer just a neighborhood dispute. Within 48 hours, Detective Sarah Chen issued subpoenas for all HOA financial records developer contracts and Victoria's personal banking information going back 5 years. "This is substantial," she told me during our interview. "We're looking at fraud-mail-fraud conspiracy to defraud and obstruction of justice." Victoria's panic became visible to the entire community. Her real estate license was under review. Her husband's city council position faced negative publicity. Criminal defense attorneys were retained and her illegal profits were frozen as evidence. But cornered animals are dangerous. Victoria's final desperate move was property sabotage. Pool equipment mysteriously malfunctioned, costing thousands. Security cameras caught late-night visitors to my property. My home office window was broken by a stray baseball improbably traveling 200 yards. Harassment expanded to my reputation, organized calls to my former law firm, letters to the state bar. Victoria's empire was crumbling. Victoria's last power play was an emergency vote to dissolve the current HOA board and install a professional management company coincidentally owned by one of her real estate associates. But the avalanche of evidence was now unstoppable. Security footage caught her late-night property sabotage. Phone records revealed coordinated harassment campaigns. Detective Chen's investigation uncovered additional kickbacks involving landscaping, pool maintenance, and snow removal contracts. Our community education campaign was gaining momentum. 47 residents signed a petition demanding financial transparency. Local news coverage educated homeowners about their rights. Property law blogs and HOA reform websites cited our case as a model for community organizing. Regional TV featured our story as a warning against unchecked HOA corruption. Miguel's documentation spread beyond Willowbrook, inspiring others to stand up. Victoria's behavior was now public record, archived on social media and news websites. Her reputation and future in real estate were shattered. The mandatory community meeting required by state law for criminal investigations involving HOA finances was scheduled for a Saturday morning. The Willowbrook Elementary School gymnasium was packed. 89 of 127 households showed up, along with Channel 8 News Detective Chen, Victoria's attorney, and countless live streams crashing the school's Wi-Fi. The smell of disinfectant mixed with nervous sweat as folding chairs faced a long table where Victoria sat, visibly aged and tense, flanked by her lawyer. Maria, Jim, and I anchored the other side evidence boxes stacked like legal artillery. Victoria opened with a victims act coached by her attorney, portraying herself as a dedicated volunteer persecuted by an unstable widower. She claimed I used legal tricks to intimidate honest volunteers and destroy community harmony. Her speech was polished but empty, ignoring the mountain of evidence sitting inches away. The crowd was silent, waiting for the truth to unfold. This was the moment everything would change. When Victoria finished, I stood and connected my laptop to the projector. Before we get into personality conflicts, I began. Let's look at the numbers. The first slide showed the original community construction budget, $2.1 million for amenities. The next slide revealed actual construction costs, $1.4 million. The difference, $700,000, glowed red on the screen. That's almost $6,000 per household that disappeared during construction, I explained. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The following slides documented ongoing overcharges pool maintenance contracts, 40% above market rate landscaping fees, triple those of comparable providers. Snow removal contracts for a Texas community that averages one snow day per decade. Over 3 years, these inflated fees added up to $200,000 more, stolen from residents. The final slide was the smoking gun Victoria's emails discussing inflated amenity budgets and profit sharing. The gymnasium fell silent. Numbers don't lie, and the truth hit harder than any accusation. Victoria's composure shattered. Ignoring her attorney's frantic gestures, she stood and shouted, "Those emails are taken out of context. I negotiated the best deals for this community." Her voice rose. If Ethan hadn't obsessed over targeting me because of a pool rule, none of this would be an issue. The crowd murmured uneasily. She inadvertently confirmed her discriminatory targeting of Miguel and exposed her financial misconduct. Phones emerged recording her meltdown live. Miguel, sitting front row, shook his head, live-streaming thousands of followers. Detective Chen stepped forward addressing the crowd. The district attorney has filed criminal charges: fraud, embezzlement, mail, fraud, and conspiracy. This is now an active federal investigation. Victoria's attorney tried to intervene, but the damage was done. Residents rose, sharing their stories of harassment and financial hardship caused by Victoria. Mrs. Chen delivered the final blow. In 60 years, I've never seen anyone work so hard to destroy the community they claim to protect. The room erupted into a standing ovation, not for me, but for justice finally served. This journey wasn't just about fighting a corrupt HOA member. It was about standing up for fairness, transparency, and the community we call home. Losing my mom left a hole in my life, but this fight gave me purpose beyond grief, a way to protect others and rebuild trust. Victoria's story is a warning and a lesson: unchecked power, even in small communities, can harm many. But it's also a reminder that knowledge, courage, and unity can overcome injustice. If you've ever felt powerless facing a system, remember you're not alone. Every voice matters. Every act of courage sparks change. Thank you for sharing this story with me. If it moved you, please subscribe, and join our community. Together, we can shine a light on truth and support those who fight for justice in their own neighborhoods. Because sometimes the greatest victory is simply refusing to stay silent. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and take care.